On the surface, villagers in Minecraft seem pretty simple. They walk around the village, make little babies, and sometimes you can maybe get a decent trade. But after a deep dive, it turns out there's much more to them than you'd actually think. I was actually really shocked about how little most people know. So here's the ultimate villager guide. Introduction to villagers. So these guys were added in Minecraft 1.9 pre-release over 11 years ago. And if there's any veterans watching, you'll already know that these villagers used to be called testificates. And today you're going to find out all about the NPC's breeding mechanics, the different villager types and clothings, their movement costs, unique mechanics, location boundaries, daily schedule, and the gossip and reputation they hold with their communities. Villager types and clothing. So there are actually 7 different villager types, which is really interesting because there's currently only 5 different villagers in the game, but more on that very soon. So not all villagers are the same, in fact they vary based on type, and the villager type is completely determined by which biome the village spawns in. So say for example a savanna village is generated, then a savanna type villager will then spawn. But what happens if a villager is bred in a biome that doesn't naturally generate a village? Well, even though villagers naturally generate in certain select biomes, all biomes are accounted for. For example, a desert biome can naturally generate overlapping into neighbouring biomes, for example a mesa biome, in which case a desert variant villager will spawn. Savanna villagers spawn in the savanna biomes, i.e. savanna plateaus and windswept savannas, and they wear red clothing with leaves in their headbands. Snowy villagers spawn in any ice biome, i.e. frozen rivers, ice spikes, snowy slopes, etc. and they wear blue, warm, woolly clothes. Taiga villagers spawn in most taiga biomes, i.e. old growth spruce taigas and windswept hills, etc. and wear mostly white and brown clothing and look quite similar to the default texture. Desert villagers spawn in all desert-like biomes, i.e. the Badlands or the Mesa, and wear cream cotton with green and orange highlights, with a hat to protect them from the sun. Next, there's the swamp villager, which most players don't even know actually exists in Minecraft. This can be spawned and bred in both the swamp and the new mangrove swamp, but it doesn't actually have its own village yet. Now it's presumed that this village was actually supposed to be added along with the mangrove swamp, but maybe there was some sort of delay, so we don't quite have that yet. They have these cool purple clothing with leaves on them. They often have a lily pad for a hat and sometimes carry these mushrooms in their belt. There's only one other villager type in the entire game that doesn't have a corresponding village, and that is the jungle variant. This guy spawns in any jungle biome and looks really cool, as we can assume its clothing is made out of the skin of ocelotls, which is quite sad, but I mean it makes sense. They use vines as waistbands and usually carry a cocoa bean in their belt. And last but not least is of course the default plains biome villager, which was of course the first villager ever added to Minecraft, which has a very plain texture. You can get these in any plains or meadow biome, or literally any other biome that I've currently not mentioned in the game, when 2 villagers are bred. So let's say hypothetically 2 swamp villagers try to breed in a snowy biome. What happens? Well, in Bedrock, the breeding is actually biome specific, so you'd end up with a baby snowy villager type, whereas in Java it comes down to a 50% chance of either biome types or the villager type. And speaking of percentages, only 2% of viewers that watch my videos are subscribed. So help me out, click that red button along with the bell icon and make my day. Villager breeding mechanics. Villagers can actually be really useful, but can die rather easily, so it's a good idea to keep them bred and the population high. So the general mechanic to breed more villagers is the villager farmers will collect loads of food from harvesting, and once they have enough they will begin to share that food with other villagers in the community. Once 2 of these villagers both have enough food in their inventories and there's an extra bed in the village, they will tend to breed, and of course make little villagers. Furthermore, there's actually 2 breeding mechanics: willingness and availability. Willingness is made more by how much food a villager has. The minimum is either 12 carrots, 12 potatoes, 12 beetroot or 3 bread. But the more they have, the more willing they will be to breed. Another way to increase the willingness is to trade with them, as this makes them feel more wanted and happier. Also, you can actually get 2 times the amount of XP if villagers are willing to breed, so make sure you keep those guys fed. And availability is if there are extra houses, plus extra beds, plus extra food, the villagers will naturally breed on their own. So for example, if there are 20 houses in a village, but only 10 beds, then the villagers will not naturally breed if there are no extra beds to claim. But on top of this, there are actually certain rules that apply. So when you place a bed down, you need to ensure there isn't a block above for at least 2 blocks. Otherwise, they won't count this as an actual bed. When you see red heart particles, then the villagers are about to breed. But if there's negative particles, that probably means that there isn't enough beds in the village. The best way to mass breed villagers is to place loads of beds on the floor and then follow it up by spreading loads of food around the village, and over time you'll have a very large population. Alternatively, you can actually build a villager breeder just like this one, and if you click on the card on the top right, then you'll be directed to a villager breeder tutorial, which is a very good watch. Villager mechanics. So we've talked about the breeding mechanics, but what about the other mechanics? Villagers have the ability to open and close wooden doors, but cannot use fence gates or trap doors, which is a little strange, especially because there are farming areas in most villages that they won't even be able to access. But I do understand, as players can use this to keep them trapped in a certain area. This means you can also use them to protect villagers from zombies, but there's actually a much better alternative. You can create mob-proof doors simply by placing down rails, as no mob in Minecraft except for the big bad warden can actually pass through this. You see, if you put this within a doorway, mobs will see the rail as a full block and they just simply won't cross it. Villager boundaries. Believe it or not, there's actually an invisible boundary around every village that the villagers will not intentionally leave. This border is completely determined by claimed beds in a village. Therefore, you can actually theoretically expand the border by placing down more beds. Also, apparently villagers have practically the same memory span as a goldfish, as if a villager goes more than 32 blocks away from the village boundary and stays there for more than 6 seconds, then the villager will forget that the village even exists. Villager movement costs. This here is actually a Bedrock exclusive feature where villagers have preferred blocks they'd rather walk on. For example, path blocks, and a few others they also prefer to walk on, but never job site blocks, as this is a higher movement cost, and to be honest that goes for most blocks in the game. And this is implemented to prevent villagers from going places they shouldn't really be going, which is a really good thing to remember if you plan on building a functioning village in Bedrock Edition, as path blocks change the way villagers move. Farmer villagers. These are the most interesting villager type out of the 15 variants, as they have the ability to harvest and replant crops. And you can actually abuse this mechanic to create a stupidly overpowered fully automatic villager crop farm. And you can click the card in the top right now to see how crazily OP this can be. This profession not only grants them harvesting ability, but also gives them the choice to use the composter, rather efficiently too. And they can even pick up bone meal, which is the only villager that can do this. He will compost the seeds as well as craft bread from the wheat and share amongst other villagers. So its inventory will never actually get clogged up, as it has 2 useful techniques of getting rid of these items. Daily villager schedule. All the 15 different types of villagers each have planned tasks and a routine they will follow every day. The list of activities usually include work, wander, gather, home, sleep and play if it's a baby villager, and they all happen throughout the certain times of the day. You see, employed villagers spend most of their time at certain job sites, whereas unemployed villagers will aimlessly wander around. Employed villagers will also wander, but they will actually go out and harvest and gather materials. Later on, they'll all go home, back to the house where their claimed bed is, and they'll head to sleep. But fun fact actually, unemployed villagers are a little more rebellious, I guess you could say, and they'll actually stay up later than the other villagers, which puts them at risk of course being killed by zombies. But also, they'll tend to wake up later than the rest of the villagers, as they don't have a work schedule to follow. Baby villagers mainly play throughout the day, which involves hanging out with their friends or jumping on top of beds. Villager reputation and gossip. If you often feed and trade with a villager, then he will gossip with other villagers and let them know of your good reputation, which is shown with positive particles. However, if you kill or lure villagers and another one of them sees you being aggressive, he will then gossip and inform all the other villagers whilst displaying negative particles. What's interesting though is if you hit a villager, its trade offers will actually become more expensive. That villager will then go and tell all the other villagers and all their prices will also increase. If you actually kill villagers though, their prices will become really expensive. But don't worry if this is done by accident, as eventually it will level out with a decay timer. But if you've done something really bad, it can take a really long time. Also, if you hurt villagers too much, then iron golems will actually try and kill you. And even if you kill the iron golem, when a new one spawns in, the villagers will inform the iron golem and he will automatically become hostile towards you. Thanks for watching part 2 of the villager guide series. Make sure you're subscribed and then check out this next video here, and I'll see you there.